Aloha, I'm Chad Blair. Thank you for tuning in to GMO Week on Olelo. From an island perspective, it's essential to ask about the impact of GMOs on our environment, lands, and resources, and to understand the effects it has on our community as it relates to public policy. But let's face it, many of us don't know where to begin when it comes to such a complex issue. And that's why we bring to you GMO Week, a series of programs to help explore and explain the pros and cons of genetically modified organisms, GMO. If you visit olelo.org/GMO, you'll be able to watch on demand discussions with both pro and anti-GMO views, as well as tune in live for a GMO debate, and even participate in the discussion by tweeting your questions to #OleloGMO. In this program, which is the first of 2 half-hour segments, we'll learn why GMO is important to Hawaii. But first, a video presented by our panelists.
Agriculture, I see it for the future and for the present also.
It helps to keep the rural communities rural. It helps the opportunity to provide jobs.
In the long run, agriculture is very important to sustainability. We have a lot of empty farmland now, and we have a lot of opportunity to do new things in agriculture. And I think research is helping to discover new ways to do things like that.
Research is critical to making agriculture viable in Hawaii.
There are different ways to grow agricultural crops. For example, conventional farming, organic farming, and also the farming that includes use of genetically engineered crops.
These different technologies should not be viewed as something competing with each other, but rather enhancing each other.
I think it's possible not only to use different forms of agriculture, whether that be biotech or conventional or organic, because there's markets for all of them.
So agricultural biotechnology or genetic engineering is basically a process that scientists are using to improve agricultural crops.
It employs the use of molecular biology to take genes from one organism and put them into another organism to derive some kind of a benefit. When the applications are in agricultural situations, we call it agricultural biotechnology.
Ag biotech is a powerful way for solving many of agriculture's problems.
It is a matter of meeting consumer needs, wants, and demands.
Generating crops that can produce more product, can taste better, a crop that doesn't take as much chemicals to use.
Agricultural biotechnology is not really new.
The foods that we have today around the world are a result of more than 10,000 years of continuous genetic modification.
I don't think there's a farmer in this state that doesn't use some form of biotech. Just selecting a type of fruit tree that might produce more or taste better. That's a form of science.
What has changed is the way that we're doing these modifications.
They have new plants with better characteristics and improved nutrition.
One of the desirable traits that scientists are working on and farmers are looking for are the crops that will be able to protect themselves.
We're currently working on drought-tolerant seed crops to grow in those kind of conditions.
Being able to develop crops that we're able to grow to feed more people. There's certainly a lot of misinformation in our community about genetic engineering, especially when it comes to agriculture. And part of that fault lies with the researchers too. We don't do a good job of telling our story and really letting people know the kinds of successes that we have.
Okay, gentlemen, let's get right to it. You've got a camera in front of you. We're beaming out across Oahu and the world for that matter. You have your chance to tell the audience why you think GMO and biotech is so important to Hawaii. Dean, let's go ahead and start with you.
You know, Hawaii's history has always been big ag supporting small ag. And right now, you know, the seed corn companies are big ag, and it helps us to bring in our inputs at lower cost by tagging on our small farmer costs to what these bigger farmers bring in. So I mean, it's essential to sustainability to keep these growers in Hawaii growing. And you know what? Going forward, as a small farmer, we need every tool we can get to become sustainable and make money. I mean, if a farmer is going to farm, they need to be able to make money.
I mean, this has helped them compete with other markets, the mainland in particular.
Exactly. But I mean, even overall, I mean, we have more pests than anywhere else because we don't monitor our borders the way we should. And that's another point, by the way.
Invasive species, we'll save that for another time.
Yeah, another time. But you know, I mean, these are the tools that we need for to be successful in agriculture going forward.
So it's a tool. That's the way that you look at it. Dennis, to build on what Dean's saying, what do you think is so important to stress to the audience about GMO and biotech?
Yes, I want to stress that GMO is really a tool, and I was very fortunate to be able to utilize this tool to actually save the papaya industry. So I was in at the beginning of doing the research to develop control. I was in when the virus came into Puna, and then we were able to implement this GMO control method and really save the papaya industry. So I am, from a scientific standpoint, we're always trying to figure out how to, as a plant pathologist, how to control diseases. And this GMO technology is really one of the best arsenal that we can use this. And no better place than in Hawaii. And just like the papaya story, it's a great example. And there's other problems happening in Hawaii that I feel we really need to employ these tools in a sensible way and help the farmers.
If we didn't have biotech and GMO, would papaya have just been wiped out in Hawaii?
I would say yes, because actually before the GMO technology, we're looking for resistance. People did work to get a resistance, and there was no resistance in Carica papaya or papaya, and other technologies of roguing and so forth were not working. And when the virus broke out in Puna, where 95% of Hawaii's papaya was being grown, that virus just spread through the industry. And if we had not done the research starting 7 years before then it would have been too late. And my emphasis is that research takes time. That's why we have to be proactive, figuring out what may be the problems, and if the GMO approach is useful, then we really should do that proactively. And that's what makes me a little nervous today, where if we take out the climate of doing this kind of research, when we do have problems, it's going to be difficult to solve.
We want to bring up research a little bit later, but I want to turn to Adolf. This is your shot to give me your soundbite, if you will.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. First of all, you know, I've had, you know, over 30 plus years of farming, involved in all types of practices. Organic farming. At one time, myself and plant geneticist grew edamame seeds for the organic market on my homestead. And conventional farming, I farmed watermelons and cantaloupes. And
where's your homestead, by the way?
It's on Molokai. It's in a place called Ho'olehua, and we like to specifically call it Anahaki Homestead. But saying that is I've grew melon the conventional way, where you follow conventional practices. In the past 15 years, I've been involved in growing biotechnology crops for the seed corn. And what I know of the technology itself, it provides farmers with the tools, as I would, you know, reiterate what Dennis and Dean spoke of the technology, and the fact that it allows farmers the opportunity to grow much more efficient on less land and higher yields and better quality. And so those four things are really critical. And more so, Hawaii is adding to the bigger idea of global warming, climate change, and providing opportunities to look at, you know, the technology adding value to fighting environmental issues and to provide a better way to grow crops for mankind in general.
Well, let me ask you something. As a consumer, we're all consumers, the folks at home watching as well. When they go into the grocery store, Safeway, Foodland, if they go to a farmer's market, how much of that produce and those goods that they're buying are GMO, have GMO elements? This is something I think, I'm speaking very plainly here because I don't quite know what the right words are, but is it 90%? Is it half? Is there a sense of how much of that produce has been genetically modified? I'll go ahead and ask Dennis.
If you talk about fresh, like if you go in the market, you used to go in the fresh produce, actually very little. The papaya is the one that is most notable, and if some people grow GMO sweet corn, might be it, and then there's also a genetically engineered squash. I don't think they grow in Hawaii, but from the fresh product, basically that's about it.
Even in a Safeway, in a Foodland, a big grocery market, at Costco or something like that. Dean, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I mean, at farmers markets, for example, if it's a Farm Bureau farmers market, we require 100% local produce. So the only thing there might be is the papayas, and I don't even think any sweet corn is really being grown locally, GM sweet corn. So, although I hear, by the way, from friends in Oregon that the GMO sweet corn is fabulous.
There's a situation with wheat there right now, but we won't go into Oregon in this topic as well. Anything you want to chime in about?
Well, just to add, I've heard comments that the seed corn farmers don't grow food, and that's really not true because, what happens here, it evolves and comes back full circle in the processed food that we eat. And 70% of the foods that we eat that are processed from the market are genetically modified.
Okay, and that's kind of what I'm also trying to get at. So in terms of the fresh produce, not so much, but when you're buying processed food, a good chunk of it is obviously.
Well, and also meats. I mean, for example, because to be able to do that, they're feeding them the corn products because it's the most efficient way of feeding these animals.
So the food that the cattle and so forth are consuming is genetically modified.
A lot of the times it is, even dairy products, for example.
Okay. Yeah. Let me ask you this then. There's a lot of science behind this, a lot of confusion about which science is credible and which is not. Devil's advocate question, if you will. A lot of the science seems to be coming from organizations that are paying for that science, Monsanto or Syngenta and so forth. How can the consumer, how can the average person in Hawaii trust whether that science is accurate and giving the true story on GMOs?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that because, a lot of focuses are on the big companies. But the papaya story really is a public sector effort. It was done by, I was at Cornell University at that time, Richard Manzard, Maureen Fitch were at the University of Hawaii. She also worked for USDA and another scientist, but Steve Ferreira. But it was really a public sector effort. We got no support from the big companies. And our motive was that the industry, the papaya industry said, we're having trouble. We really need help. And as public sector scientists, I felt that this was our job. So we just went ahead and did all of that. So actually that project was done very cheaply, but it was public sector scientists doing their job to solve problems. And this was back in the 1990s. And I thought, my gosh, this is what we're supposed to be doing. So sometimes it boggles my mind that people are really complaining about the GMO papaya because everybody at that time was rooting for us. They were saying, hey, please solve the problem.
It is a success story in many ways. I've heard less about a rainbow papaya being a problem than some other products as well, but you are right. Back to this question, though, about the science, about the research. The companies, big and small, say it's peer-reviewed, it's in respected journals and so forth. Why then the doubt about the validity?
It's the most, it's the one product out there in industry that is vetted for years and years before it's put on the market. Organic products aren't. Look at the scare right now with the blueberries.
Right.
That's organic, okay? And it's not to say that organic is bad, but it's not vetted to the point of GM products. And even with this scare of the blueberries, okay, it might not be the growing protocol of the blueberries that affected the product. It's handling. So this could happen to conventional, it could happen to biotech, it could happen, and it's happened to organic. So, you know, who's to say that that's where the thing is? It's just that there are times when you cannot guarantee 100% that everything is safe. You know, and I think that's what people have to look at going forward, is that, you know, you grow organic and there are protocols that are done, but it's you still make mistakes. And that can happen in any industry.
Adolf, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think what's important here is to realize the fact that there's a lot of collaborative effort between the seed growers or companies, as you will describe them, that have to work through the protocol process, through the regulatory system. You know, it involves.
Does this go to Washington?
It goes to
the FDA
the
on
USDA,
down,
the FDA, the EPA, and so those play a critical role on vetting through the process from the developmental stage all the way through the regulatory stage and to the commercial stage. And mind you, with layers and layers of regulatory protocols put into place, it makes it difficult, as Dennis described, where public institutions used to use a lot of these opportunities to research on biotechnology. It's becoming a lot less affordable for those institutions to do that because of the regulatory process. It takes, from the time you start to develop a product, it takes almost 13 years to get it to the commercial market, and you have to go through all of this rigorous oversight. And so, and you know, it's millions and millions of dollars, 100+ millions of dollars to get a product from inception to the market. So it's very difficult.
Speaking of millions and millions of dollars, a lot of money goes into Washington, lobbyists and so forth. There's lobbying here at the local level. One of the fears that I hear from opponents of GMO is that, you have your insiders in Washington that are helping you out because they're on your payroll, and therefore they're going to get that product through the regulatory process, that they're going to cut some corners and so forth. You've heard this over and over again. How would you respond to that, Dennis?
I can truthfully say this because as a public sector scientist, myself and Richard Manzard actually filled out these protocols. We were the ones that filled out the protocol, answered to FDA, EPA, and you know, all the interactions is that it's very science-based, very objective. I myself don't see how these people would be bought off by big companies, because you got to go to a public effort, and every document that we sent in was available for the public to see.
Those are public documents. They're available for
Absolutely.
review.
Yes.
You felt it was a thorough vetting. There wasn't some sort of
absolutely.
I don't have to fill out this form or that and so forth because I know so and so that'll wink and nod or something like that. Dean.
You know what? I think it's really, when we go to the ledge, for example, it's about the truth. I mean, what I tell the legislators is what I feel is the truth about local agriculture and how the seed corn industry plays into sustainability and taking care of our whole agricultural industry here, and how they play in, and how it's absolutely necessary to have these companies taking up, 10,000 acres, say, of land, because if they're not here, that land goes to what? Development? That's the alternative? It's certainly not going to be taken up all by small ag. So we do need these companies here, and we need cooperation from them. We need them to help us to build out our other industries of producing food for local people. Even though, the seed corn industry, they don't grow food for local, but they do provide food for the world.
And they're providing jobs.
Yeah,
too.
and that's what I think is a missing element in all of this. And it's not only that, but the jobs are farmers. I mean, it's not about the Monsantos and the Syngentas. It's about their products being used by farmers across the world, across the nation, that make agriculture a viable industry for these guys to keep into agriculture production, and also to lower our cost of food for those people that are on food stamps out there, for example.
Farms, one of the other criticisms that you hear frequently, in fact, in many ways, the anti-GMO movement is focused on this as being paramount, the use of pesticides to grow the crops, herbicides, and so forth. I guess I could sum it up this way. The basic complaint, and it's a serious one from their point of view, is that somehow we're poisoning the environment, poisoning the water, our aquifers, that the food is being, the poison, if you will, is being passed along into our bloodstream and so forth. It's a pretty serious charge. How would you respond to that one?
Well, I think what's important here is that first and foremost, I'm a farmer. Dean's a farmer. And Dennis has been around farming practically for the past 30, 40 years. And so it's in our best interest to ensure that what we do on a farm is that we protect the resources that we have. And that's the water and the land, and obviously our workers. Mm-hmm. And so those things are first and foremost on our minds. We have a very good safety program, excellent safety program. And if I look across the industries here in Hawaii, I think we have one of the best safety programs out of the list of industries that are operating here in Hawaii. The fact of the matter is, when we apply pesticide, we use a protocol that's based on integrated pest management. We go out, we scout the fields, and we do whatever we can to go through a natural process to control pests, whether the pest is insects or disease or weed problem. These are all looked at first and foremost as how we can address those issues the natural way. The second is that if we do have to apply some kind of crop protection onto our crop, is that we would look at the most benign pesticide available. A lot of it is based on some of the bioinsecticides that are now available. And these are insecticides that are very effective. So we are very conscious about that. And one of the other things that's important is that we do a lot of our applications through a precision methodology. Precision is that we target the specific insect. If we're putting fertilizer, we run the fertilizer through the drip irrigation, and it targets the root system right by the crop. It's not spread out like the older days when they used to spread granular fertilizer and broadcast it. A lot of it is just targeting specifically where the need is, and that's basically how we farm.
Okay. Dennis.
Yeah, I would say that, as far as pesticides and so forth, the United States has a history of safe use of pesticides. You rarely see people dying from pesticides. And so I totally agree with Adolf. I have seen the farm at, let's say, Monsanto, and they pay tremendous attention to these kind of stuff. I think it would be really good if people actually asked to go and see some of these operations to see for themselves.
Would you give those folks a tour if they asked, these anti-GMO
Oh, if I could, absolutely. Like a lot of people came to my lab while I was directing the USDA, and I showed them exactly what we did. The gene engineering experiments and all the data. Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to hide, really. I mean, so I think that would help in people getting more aware as to what really is happening. And the best way to do it is just go and ask them.
I think that's absolutely true, because as a big company, they're able to do things on a level that, and they're not going to cut corners, especially dealing with pesticides. A small farmer probably has more opportunities to do that, to cut corners and do it not quite the right way than these big companies, because they have the facilities, they have the money to do it the correct way, and they're going to do it because they're under scrutiny. The small guys aren't. So, I mean, if there's anybody, and that's what bothers me, is like, okay, it might be the small farmers that might be abusing this more. And I'm not trying to throw us guys under the table either, because we try to do it the right way, So, but yeah, for people to be saying that these big companies are doing it illegally and stuff like that, to me, it goes against logical reasoning.
Yeah, and Chad, to add what Dean is saying is the fact that, a lot of us, we use common household pesticides. And a lot of us, we assume that we read the label, but it's paramount.
Roundup and so forth?
Well, I'm talking about off-the-shelf stuff that you can buy, whether it's something to control your roaches or your ants. But mind you, to a certain degree, you have to be familiar on how you handle it appropriately. And so what's important to note is we have trained personnel that have to go through a rigorous training to get certified to apply pesticide. And everything is based on EPA standards, worker protection standards. And these standards are overseen by the Hawaii Department of Agriculture, and they periodically do a local inspection. And so we have to abide by how much we apply, when we apply it, and follow the rule of the law, which is follow the label.
Okay, something we will be talking more about, labels of a different nature. I'd like to thank our panelists, Dennis, Adolph, and Dean, for giving us insight on the pros of GMO. A reminder to everyone watching, be sure to visit olelo.org/GMO to watch both pro and anti-GMO programs and to send in your questions for our live discussions. I personally don't have a stance on this issue, but I'm committed to being better informed and engaged, and I hope you are too. This is Chad Blair for GMO Week. On behalf of Olelo Community Media, thanks for tuning in.